Vanessa put on an innocent expression and stated that she already had plans for the evening. After that, she turned around and headed in the other direction, and the guy finally realized he had no chance to win her over. Adam noticed the racer clinging to their nanny and explained that this guy was the favorite, but Vanessa was not interested. She then turned to the boys and explained that it was time for them to go to the box as the race was about to begin. Meanwhile, Mr. Parallon and Madame Colt met Alice at a table on the balcony of a local restaurant. The French woman said she would send the amended contracts and information next week. Alice didn't object but added she had one more small request. Oscar asked what it was. She recalled that the summer ball was coming soon, and Mr. Parallon said he already knew about it. Then Alice leaned closer to him and explained she needed a companion. He began to explain that he was already busy, but suddenly she interrupted, making it clear that refusal was not accepted. She had no doubt that Parallon would receive her own invitations this year, and now she wanted to hire a woman to accompany her. Alice explained that she wanted exactly the one Oscar had brought here for Madame Colt's holiday. Mr. Parallon at first thought she wanted to hire his nanny, but she immediately clarified that she wanted the name of the agency Vanessa came from. Oscar began to explain that Vanessa was not from that kind of organization but suspected Alice wanted to find out information. Alice said she would never believe he just found such a pearl on the street. He again stated Vanessa was not from an agency, she just did different work but primarily looked after his son. Alice was surprised Vanessa was really a babysitter because before she had thought it was just a rumor. She added that although she did not have children, she would gladly hire such a nanny. Alice also said Oscar would bring Vanessa to the summer ball in any case, but he explained that he would be accompanied by Anna. Alice smiled slightly and reminded him of her small request, to just bring Vanessa to the ball, and then she would sign all the contracts. Madame Colt could not understand why it mattered so much who Oscar would bring to the ball. Parallon remembered the French woman's warning that he had a weakness and could not afford another one, but he said he didn't care. Alice was happy and added she looked forward to the ball, then put on a serious face as several people approached them. The others turned to see Vanessa and Adam walking toward them with the two boys. Each of them began telling their parents about their impressions of the race, assuring them Ferrari would be the winner. Vanessa turned her attention to Alice, who was glad everyone was finally ready. She added that it would be quiet this weekend. The nanny realized she was a little wrong because Nick was in charge, with Anna at the head. Vanessa imagined she would be surprised if the city was still standing by then. She told Alice that silence was sometimes useful but now began to doubt it. Oscar asked Adam if the children liked the walk, and he assured him they were satisfied. The driver admitted Vanessa's presence brought great pleasure to one of the racers of the Grading Leopards team. Vanessa immediately corrected that the guy was just friendly. Adam explained that the fact Vanessa had sent him off was a bad sign for the rider. Vanessa added she was nobody's good luck charm, not understanding why the driver sewed this role on her. At that moment, she noticed Mr. Parallon's warning look and immediately fell silent. Suddenly, Alice came closer and explained some points about fate. She asked the nanny not to be so confident in her claim that she really was nobody's talisman. Soon they returned to their seats, where they could watch the cars race around the track. Cody asked Adam how many laps were left, and he did not hide that there were still many. Vanessa offered the boys a snack to replenish their energy but noticed they couldn't even hear her. Suddenly, Adam cried out in disappointment and leaned out of the box, making sure he did not imagine it. At that moment, the car he was rooting for was shown with a dark flag with an orange circle in the middle. Cody asked what the flag meant, and Adam explained that Ferrari had just urgently turned into a pit stop. Vanessa suspected that this meant they had lost, and Adam confirmed it was obviously true. Still, he didn't want to believe it and suspected something was wrong but couldn't figure out what. Meanwhile, the car was carried into a distant tunnel, and when it stopped, sparks began to fall from it. This was seen not only by them but also by many spectators watching the race on TV, who began to worry. Vanessa remembered that it was in this car that the guy who asked her to become his mascot for good luck was located. Alice wondered if anyone had seen what caused this, and Madame Colt explained that the car had just broken down in an instant. Adam explained it wasn't about the brakes because on this track they don't go fast enough to put load on the brakes that could cause failure. He suggested engine problems due to high temperatures in the tunnel could disrupt cooling but said this was accounted for. The nurse assumed it was an accident, and Adam wondered what could have contributed to it. Vanessa listened but understood he himself did not believe it because he had raced here more than once. The boys were also worried because the car was approaching the pit stop and they could not believe how this could happen. Clark was very scared for the driver, hoping he would be all right and then be given a new beautiful car. Mr. Parallon approached them and suggested going for ice cream since it would take some time to clear the track. Clark asked his mother's permission and she agreed, asking only that he not overdo it with powders and toppings. Madame Colt asked Oscar to take her son to their hotel after the walk, and he agreed. She admitted she had lost all appetite because of the spoil, and Alice chuckled. Alice turned to Vanessa, wondering why they were leaving so quickly, stating it was just beginning to get interesting. A little later that night, Vanessa began working on her laptop, trying to figure something out. She understood it was not her competence, but it did not give her peace of mind. She couldn't stop thinking about what had happened, and something told her the accident happened for a reason. After some digging, Vanessa realized her prep had not let her down and she now understood what could be the matter. On surveillance camera footage, she noticed Alice's man swarming near the car, dressed as a Ferrari engineer. This recording was just before the start of the race, and Vanessa suggested this man could have ruined the car. She remembered Adam's words about the huge list of accidents on this track and everything Alice had said, especially about the race. Vanessa's mind was jumbled, but she knew it was more complicated than she had imagined. She also understood she could not forget for a moment who all these people really were. The next day, they were going to Verona, and Vanessa explained to Cody how long the trip would take. The boy was indignant again at the length. As they went outside, Vanessa heard a familiar voice behind her. She saw the driver, almost all in bandages but glad everything was not so bad. He hinted that she might want to make amends for yesterday, but Vanessa did not understand what he meant. The driver explained she had caused all his failures because the day before she refused to become his talisman. Vanessa was a little indignant, realizing this driver would never know what really happened. She understood she would not be able to explain the true reason to him because it did not concern her. Then she asked why he didn't think she could refuse him twice, and he said she couldn't be so cruel. Vanessa tried to explain but was called away as everything was ready to leave. She decided to say goodbye. At that moment, Mr. Parallon came up and menacingly asked the nurse to send the new friend as soon as possible. The racer did not argue, realizing the cute girl already had a fan of gorgeous appearance, and bowed out. He crutched in the opposite direction, saying on the way that his luck had really run out. Vanessa asked Oscar what that meant, and he explained the driver would not have fallen behind without a good reason and they were on schedule. Mr. Parallon walked forward, and Vanessa thought about the first time she had heard of it. As she was about to get into the car, Cody said that this time she would drive in the middle, and if he couldn't look out the window, he would scream all the way. The girl hinted she could resort to threats, but the boy only repeated it again, promising to fulfill it. For a moment, there was silence between them, only their eyes were ready to attack each other until Oscar called out. Vanessa did not argue with the prankster and climbed into the car, pleased with her victory. The driver came up and patted Cody encouragingly on the head, saying he was very brave as always, then went to the car, adding he would not like to see what Vanessa's revenge would be this time. For a moment, Cody wondered what the nurse would do to him later but thought she would think of something by then. Vanessa took a seat and tried to understand how she had let the boy get away with it. He sprawled on the seat, pushing the nanny away from him and closer to his father. She also thought about how she had lived with them so long she could immediately recognize what Mr. Parallon smelled like. This time, his perfume smelled like pine and something fruity, more like apple. Then she realized she was thinking too much, and when she opened her eyes, she noticed her boss's puzzled look. The girl immediately turned away, convincing herself to stop thinking about it because the man's wife had disappeared only a year ago. Vanessa realized the headmistress was right and the rules had to be understood. She also convinced herself that just because Oscar was a good father, it didn't mean he was a good man. She noticed it had become very hot in the car and immediately began to feel sleepy. Vanessa did not resist, and when she passed out, she leaned her head on Oscar's shoulder, which surprised him a little. For some time, the car continued on a flat road, going so smoothly that it was not surprising Vanessa fell asleep. Her head was on Mr. Parallon's shoulder, and he did not dare disturb her sleep. Oscar only glanced at Vanessa occasionally, worried she would be comfortable in this position. Suddenly, the driver coughed as if by accident, signaling that the scene looked very romantic. Mr. Parallon decided Adam was sticking his nose into the wrong business and reached for a button on the panel. The next moment, the window protecting the passengers from the driver closed, and only a pitiful sigh was heard from Adam's seat. By this time, Vanessa began to wake and did not immediately understand what was happening. Then she saw the boss's shoulder in front of her and was dumbfounded, trying to remember how it had happened. She tried to explain everything to him, but it only turned out funny. Oscar told her not to worry because she needed to rest. Vanessa still wanted to justify herself, and Mr. Parallon added that Cody had kicked her out of the window seat. She saw the boy curled up in a ball on the seat, quietly snoozing. He looked cute and tired, and the nanny admitted it had been a long week for all of them. Mr. Parallon sighed heavily, agreeing and adding that she was not over it yet. After a while, they arrived in Verona, and the car stopped at the entrance to Mrs. Parallon's house. Cody woke up, realizing they had arrived, and rubbed his eyes to look less sleepy. Adam couldn't resist asking Vanessa if she had slept well, and she explained she had to look at the road while driving. The driver proudly declared his awareness was unparalleled, which made the girl almost boil with anger, but she didn't argue. Together with Oscar and his son, they went to the entrance. Before the door opened, Mr. Parallon wanted to warn Vanessa about his mother, but he didn't have time. His mother had already opened the door wide and was staring at them. Oscar explained they had arrived as promised, hoping his mother would not make any claims. At that moment, Cody shouted happily toward his grandmother, whom he had missed a lot. The lady of the house was very happy with the boy, noticing he had grown, and he admitted he now ate a lot of meat. She confirmed that was how he should eat, then took her grandson by the hand and led him into the house. She admitted she had prepared something special for him in the backyard and asked him to go find out what it was. Cody immediately took off and ran to find out what kind of surprise had been prepared for him. The mother admitted she was glad her grandson looked cheerful and unharmed, and Oscar reminded her that everything was fine with him. The woman then turned her attention to Vanessa, who stood quietly at the door, and realized she was the babysitter. Vanessa confirmed this, and Adam sarcastically wished her good luck. The owner of the house said Anna had already told her about Vanessa, so she knew something. The girl was a little confused, not understanding what Anna could have said, remembering how she had treated her in the past. Mrs. Parallon admitted she had expected someone more interesting, which made Vanessa even more confused. Still, she wondered why she seemed mundane to her boss's mother, although she understood it wasn't far from the truth. The owner explained that Vanessa looked as green as the rest of her son's wards, but added that she should refrain from making hasty judgments. Vanessa smiled and expressed her appreciation. Deciding not to interfere with the relatives' conversation, the nanny reported she would check on Cody. As she left, She felt the gaze of both her boss and his mother on her back but showed no reaction. Oscar tried to greet his mother, but she rushed in, asking when her grandson would return to a normal house. He explained the hotel was comfortable, but the mother said it was not suitable for a growing child who needed a place to play. She suggested she could pick him up, but Oscar retorted that was out of the question. After a moment's thought, Mrs. Paralan agreed that her brother-in-law wouldn't approve or allow it anyway. She reminded Oscar she was not as young as she used to be and had some troubles. She asked him to tell her more about what was happening in Chicago, referring to the incident at the hotel. She admitted to hearing rumors about a war for territory with the local mafia and others. Oscar could not understand where such sharp interest came from and reminded her that she herself had said many times she was not interested in such matters. Mrs. Paralan confessed she knew her son well and realized he was definitely up to something. She regretted not intervening when it was necessary. Oscar told his mother he had not asked for her intervention, so she shouldn't worry. But she warned that she knew what he wanted and understood well what it could cost him later. Oscar didn't know what to say and sighed heavily, holding his head. She explained he was still too young to understand but assured him some paths had no return. She added with regret that she could not go with him, which upset her deeply. Oscar assured her she had nothing to worry about and that if he had plans, they had nothing to do with her. Mrs. Paralan was silent for a moment, realizing she had much to say but knew she could not change his mind. She expressed hope that he would understand and forgive her. Oscar did not fully understand. She explained she wanted to spend more time with her grandson while she still could. After that, Mrs. Paralan left, and Oscar thought deeply about everything, especially his life. He understood his mother would never forgive him for this choice but knew he could not do otherwise. Seeing their family photo, he realized his mother also understood where the other path might lead. Later, they gathered for dinner, and Cody assured his grandmother she needed to meet his friend Clark. She wondered who they were and how they met, then learned they took art lessons together until the teacher tried to kidnap him. Vanessa felt a little out of place as the conversation grew more like an interrogation. Mrs. Paralan worried about her grandson. Cody added that afterward, they arranged to meet and play at the hotel. Suddenly, he blurted out that Clark's mother hadn't really wanted to blow up the hotel. Madam looked at her son, realizing he must have been terrible after the adventure. Cody saw his grandmother was upset and assured her he was fine because Vanessa was with him. Mrs. Paralan gave Vanessa a piercing look, demanding confirmation. Cody kept revealing secrets about helping clean the hotel, and the nanny felt like she was about to be shot. She mentally pleaded with him not to reveal everything. Oscar and Adam shared her sentiment. The next morning, Vanessa and Cody went to the garden, where he boasted about his drawings, explaining how he made them. Vanessa liked them and offered to put one in a frame, not the first such offer. While they played on the grass, someone watched them from the second floor, Mrs. Paralan, whose face looked a little sad but pleased to see her grandson happy. Oscar approached her and explained Vanessa was not what his mother had imagined. Madam asked him not to be complacent since Vanessa was just an employee. Oscar looked at his mother meaningfully and added that Vanessa was much more than a worker. Madam, trying to maintain her stance, said Oscar lacked life experience to make such judgments. Oscar was hurt by this and proudly declared Vanessa had saved his son's life, even risking her own multiple times. She was smart and purposeful, strong enough to protect Cody but gentle enough to touch his unreachable sides. Mrs. Paralan was indignant, feeling his words were ambiguous and hinted at hidden meanings. Oscar insisted that when he wasn't with Cody, Vanessa was the only person he wanted around him. The mother recalled that after the last time they were hurt, it became difficult to trust fully. Still, Oscar was sure he was right, and if he was wrong, Vanessa would have to prove him wrong. Mrs. Paralan did not want to argue further and said when that happened, it would hurt him even more. Later, the nanny asked the maid to pack a basket of snacks, which she agreed to, knowing what Cody loved. As Vanessa was leaving, Mrs. Paralan called her into the living room. Before starting, Madam invited her to tea. Vanessa sensed this woman would say everything she thought about her. Unexpectedly, Madam admitted her grandson liked Vanessa, surprising the girl who had expected a different start. She said after the loss of his mother, Cody didn't let anyone near him, but now she saw promising changes and credited Vanessa for them. It seemed she didn't mind Vanessa raising him. The lady only wanted to give advice while looking at Vanessa as if threatening. She recalled Vanessa didn't like hints about inexperience and admitted Vanessa reminded her of a dear friend at her age, crazy about a dangerous but charismatic man. They married and had a child, which made her friend happy, but danger overtook them. Mrs. Paralan's look suggested she remembered her own tragedy. She assured Vanessa that danger overtook everyone. She admitted her son was dangerous too but could be charming when annoyed or worried. Vanessa suddenly felt Mrs. Paralan hinting at something more and tried to explain she meant no harm, but Madam said intentions didn't matter much from experience. Vanessa loudly declared Mr. Paralan was her employer, and she would not defame his wife's memory. Madam was surprised by the outburst but hoped this was the only thing stopping Vanessa, knowing she knew nothing of the situation and likely thought Oscar was mired in sadness. Madam thought it romantic but assured the situation was more complicated. She admitted Oscar's marriage was rushed, arranged by his uncle. Madam knew even then that a girl named Emmeline was unsuitable, too soft and innocent. Everyone knew it. She sighed, remembering it. Mrs. Paralan knew Oscar wouldn't like them talking about his late wife but said she didn't need his approval. She returned to her memories, took out a photograph, and remembered their young, reckless years. She showed Vanessa the photo of how happy they were. Vanessa seemed struck, knowing the woman better than anyone. Alongside Mrs. Paralan, her mother was also in the picture. Vanessa didn't expect this turn. Mrs. Paralan seemed to notice Vanessa's reaction. The nanny didn't know whether to confess or deny anything. Madam said Barbara Strike was the smartest investment Vanessa's parents made, and nannies from the Elite Academy would never refuse to protect their ward. Mrs. Paralan was sure Barbara had saved the child but never expected Vanessa to fall back into a dangerous life. Vanessa tried to object, but Madam told her not to worry, saying she had raised better liars and was sure there were reasons. She believed Vanessa didn't know the whole story but had the chance to choose a path that cuts ties. If she did, Mrs. Paralan promised to help. After the conversation, the travelers packed up and set off. Cody soon fell asleep, and Vanessa, holding his head in her lap, kept thinking the woman knew everything. Despite their efforts to hide Vanessa's ties to her parents, it was enough for Mrs. Paralan to look at her and understand. Vanessa worried if the headmistress knew someone from the past could remember her after so many years. She was distracted by Mr. Paralan, who had urgent business. Upon returning to Chicago, he planned to prepare an annex for their return and wanted Vanessa and Cody to go with him to see their future house. She promised to do her best. Vanessa turned her face away, unsure whether to tell her employer everything. His mother had said nothing, perhaps intending to keep it secret. Vanessa understood from Mrs. Paralan's expressions that her mother was very dear to her, unlike her father. Maybe this woman didn't mind Vanessa's Diavolo family background, as long as she was with her grandson. That evening, back home, Vanessa busied herself washing dishes, unaware she was slipping into memories and reflections on the conversation. Mr. Paralan noticed she had been rubbing one plate for over 5 minutes. She looked at the already sparkling plate and realized he was right. Trying not to show her excitement, she pretended to work hard. Oscar realized his mother had said something to Vanessa, causing her strange, thoughtful behavior. Vanessa flinched, fearing he knew everything but wondered why he would think so. He asked if his mother's words had hurt her but told her not to pay attention. He guessed Mrs. Paralan might have said something inappropriate about him, but Vanessa assured him she hadn't heard anything bad and he shouldn't worry. He didn't seem convinced. She repeated that his mother was just chatting without touching important topics. This should have reassured him, but he became alert, looking intently at Vanessa. She didn't know what else to say. After a few seconds of silence, Oscar decided not to interrogate her, realizing the day had been eventful. Suddenly, Vanessa apologized, saying she didn't want to talk about it, lowering her head guiltily. Oscar said he understood and they parted, wishing good night. Vanessa locked herself in her room and tried to convince herself Oscar didn't know anything, otherwise, she wouldn't still be here. Yet his reaction made it clear he was suspicious, frightening her. She knew she had to be twice as careful or face a terrible fate. The next morning, they went to see the newly constructed house. Cody looked at it suspiciously, as if haunted. He said the house looked exactly like their previous one and sighed sadly. Vanessa tried to cheer him, telling him there was now a drawing room, which made him very happy. Cody immediately checked it out, shouting that he wanted to choose the paint color himself. Vanessa noticed the house resembled the old one, though many things had changed. Inside, she spotted the ward rushing to check his room. She asked him to wait so they could check together, but Mr. Paralan asked her to stay for a moment. He said there would be an event next week and needed Vanessa to go with him. She was surprised, recalling unpleasant memories from last time. He explained it was an annual mafia meeting where heads of large families gathered. He'd thought of going with Anna, but Alice insisted he take Vanessa. It would be just a business visit, and he'd appreciate her company but would understand if she refused. Vanessa did not object and agreed. Oscar was pleased and promised to share more details later. Afterward, he went to his room, and Vanessa found his insistence strange, though perhaps he was just setting boundaries. After the trip, she recalled the conversation with his mother, making her anxious again. She hoped things would return to normal once they moved and she could work in peace. She also looked forward to having her own room again, though oddly, it did not lift her mood as expected. At that moment, Cody called her to look at something. She realized he had found his surprise, a model of a duck pond in the middle of the room, which the little mafia member loved. Vanessa showed him a lamp that could spin, illuminating the pond at different times of day. Cody was so happy he nearly cried. Vanessa hugged him, glad he liked it. He promised to draw ducks during his free time. She joked about opening a museum with his paintings from the waterfowl period. Cody wanted to start drawing immediately but couldn't find his supplies. The move would take a couple more weeks. To reassure him, Vanessa promised the time would fly by so fast he wouldn't notice. He looked at her hopefully and wondered if they'd have to move again. Vanessa didn't know because Cody himself might want to return to Albuquerque. He objected because Clark was not there, only the rest of the family was in that town, which didn't make him happy. The nanny reminded him that change always comes unexpectedly. At the same time, she promised the boy she would always be around as long as she could, and they would face these changes together. Cody suddenly reminded her that she wasn't really going to be with him forever, and she knew his words were true. Vanessa agreed that she wasn't always going to be there for him. At that moment, Mr. Paralan entered the room. Oscar quietly returned to his office, hoping they hadn't noticed him peeking in. He began to remember Vanessa's promise to go with him to the event and what it meant that she would not be able to stay with his son. For a moment, Mr. Paralan even blamed himself for making her do things she didn't want to do, worrying it might affect Cody. He wished he could change something, but so far, he couldn't. Just then, his uncle called him. Without even greeting, he said he knew Oscar had decided to attend the meeting. Mr. Paralan did not deny it, since it was a rare opportunity to establish relations with the mafia family. It also showed they didn't doubt the Paralan power over Chicago. But his uncle suddenly suggested he reconsider. As a don, he didn't dare order his nephew to ignore a direct invitation that could offend the mafia family. Oscar decided his uncle was hinting at something. The uncle only said what his nephew should know, leaving the decision to him. Mr. Paralan was already in a bad mood, and the call only added fuel to the fire. He grew angry with his relative, suspecting something was amiss. Oscar slammed his fist on the glass in frustration. Suddenly, Vanessa burst into the office, thinking something terrible had happened. Mr. Paralan noticed her reaction and assured her everything was fine. She apologized immediately, explaining she had heard a strange noise and thought an intruder had climbed in, so she reacted. Oscar reassured her it was only his obsessive thoughts and turned back to the window. Vanessa realized she had interrupted his important thoughts and was about to leave when the boss asked her to wait. He admitted that tomorrow he was going to the park with his son. He also planned to hold an informal meeting with Madame Cole there, and a walk with Cody would be the best excuse. The nanny hesitated, saying it wouldn't be right to use the children's friendship that way. Mr. Paralan agreed but said the conversation might be important. Vanessa expressed hope the children would have a good time despite the outcome of the last meeting. Oscar thanked her for understanding. She modestly replied she was just doing her job. Sighing, he said she was right, wished her good night, and said he would keep thinking about the future. After Vanessa left, Mr. Paralan made another late-night call to Madame Cole, apologizing for the hour but saying he had something to ask. The next day, they met at the park. Mr. Paralan immediately asked if she had learned anything. Madame Cole said she had used all her contacts but found nothing except reports of a struggle over invitations. She would have been more helpful if she had known what he was looking for. She glanced at him, and he wasn't sure. The gang had no reason to go against them, but his source warned him not to attend the meeting. Mr. Paralan admitted he didn't trust the source fully and was tormented by doubts. Madame Cole snorted, saying such decisions always come with doubts. She added there would be no one to guard Cody if Vanessa went with him. Oscar was confident in his people, but Madame advised doubling security since the meeting would last until nightfall. She had a bad feeling. Oscar recalled Clark was always welcome at the hotel, and they could join forces. Madame Cole objected, saying if the two were together, they would be targeted. Oscar wondered what would be best in that case. Then he remembered the agency where he had hired Vanessa and offered to give Madame Cole their contacts. The woman suddenly got angry because he had earlier assured her his nanny was not connected to any agency. He admitted he had lied and explained the application process would take time, even with an acquaintance. They wouldn't have time before the meeting, but it was a good plan for the future. Madame Cole noticed his generosity but said their children were good friends, so he had to care for his son's well-being. She agreed, saying all their actions were for the children's sake, and Oscar was glad she finally understood. Meanwhile, Vanessa focused on the children, who were frolicking happily at the long-awaited meeting. At some point, a man approached her, asking permission to sit down. His girlfriend immediately recognized Vanessa. It was the inspector. Vanessa glanced at him suspiciously, admitting she hadn't expected to see him there. He noted that the heirs of large criminal empires were openly playing together in the park, which he thought was risky. Vanessa found it stranger to see a suspicious man watching the kids. The man tried to object, but the nanny doubted his superiors knew where he was. She remembered the zoo and confidently stated the inspector was deliberately watching them. He said these were public places. He had broken through her database but found no violations of the law. Vanessa made sure he was spying on law-abiding citizens. The inspector then shifted to talk about her employer. He didn't know how she contacted Mr. Paralan but noticed she seemed out of place. He explained to Miss Smith that she was working for very bad people and asked for help putting them behind bars. Vanessa realized he was offering to be a messenger, but it was not in her best interest to set herself up like that. The inspector understood she wanted to leave things as they were but was sure a moment would come to change everything. He said this way she would help herself and that the boys would feel better when their parents were imprisoned. Then, they could grow up like ordinary children without underground intrigues, weapons, and explosions. After that, the inspector handed Vanessa his business card with a personal number. She looked at the card dubiously, not moving to take it. The man put it next to her on the bench and asked her to think about his proposal. Then he began to leave, hoping she would call when she realized he was right. Vanessa turned back to the children. Cody ran up and asked who the strange man was. She grabbed the business card so the boy wouldn't see. Vanessa explained he was a lost soul in need of guidance. Clark said his mother also saw such people. The nanny didn't want the children to delve into it, so she offered everyone ice cream. She decided to keep the card, thinking it might be useful later.